Okay, Rob, what is the news as far as England's concerned?
Well, we've got Luke Cowan-Dickie, Dave Ewers, not Sam Hill, I'll come back to Sam Hill. So Luke Cowan-Dickie, Dave Ewers, Jack Noel and Henry Slade are directly involved in the senior EPS, and Sam Hill will be involved in an injury replacement role for Henry until he's fit. So obviously we're delighted to have those guys involved. I think it shows what we've talked about a lot, that if you get to the right end of the table and players play well for you and you get on form as a side and as individuals, you do get recognition. And I think from my perspective, I'm just really pleased that Eddie Jones seems to have believed what he's seen with his own eyes. Some of those guys are injured. Dave Ewers and Luke and Slade have been injured now for a little while, but he's believed the form they showed at the start of the Premiership season, when there's no doubt they were three of the form players in the competition. He's looked at that. He's obviously looked at that, because he's come into it later than those guys getting injured, really, and he's believed what he's seen with his own eyes, and not really what's going on around in the press about who's on form right now. And there's so much press revolves around who's been good that weekend, whereas I think what those three guys in particular have shown is that they've shown real quality over the early period of the season. I think it's the same with Sam Hill. Sam's been unfortunate to be injured recently, but in the early part of the season he showed an awful lot of good form, and everyone's aware how good Nose's been this season. Nose's been bang on form, whether he's picked him in the centre, whether he picked him on the wing, whether he's played at fullback. He's been one of the form backs in the whole competition, both in Europe and in the Premiership, and we're delighted that those guys have got the recognition they deserve.
A lot of speculation about Eddie Jones, and obviously the proof will be in the pudding, but is he a little bit of a breath of fresh air in the England game, do you think?
As you say, I think it's a little early to tell. I can only make comment on the guys who we've got here. I think the makeup of the rest of the squad will be very interesting, and that will probably be a bigger indicator, because I think the Exeter lads, they thoroughly deserve to be there, and I think for a lot of people who've watched a lot of rugby this season, it won't be a surprise that those guys are involved, really. So as it stands now, what's good for him is coming fresh. He can attack it from a fresh perspective. He can outline what he wants from each individual position within his side, aligning to what he wants to see. And so there will be a freshness about it, because it will be different. There's no doubt he'll see things differently to Stuart Lancaster, as Stuart Lancaster saw things differently to Martin Johnson. That's how it works. And so there will be a change-up, and there will be something different going on.
Every time a Chiefs player seems to be mentioned in context of England, they seem to pick up an injury. What's the news with Jack?
Jack's doesn't look too bad, doesn't look as bad as you would think looking at how the mechanics of the injury. At this stage it looks like a little bit of bony bruising. We're very hopeful that, and initial scans have shown there's not ligament damage or significant ligament damage. So really it's a little bit about resting him up, keeping him off feet for a little while, and just letting the knee joint as a whole settle down. We're hopeful that won't take more than a couple of weeks, so we're very hopeful that there's a potential for him to take a full part in the Six Nations.
So plenty of good news there. A little bit of disappointment presumably for people like Jeff Parling, Thomas Waldron. Will Chudley was also possibly thought of as well. Yeah,
but I think what you've got to remember is never say never with a lot of these things. Tom's showing some really good form, and he's got to fight to continue to do that. The same with Jeff. I thought Jeff was really good. Best game he's had for us here against Gloucester. It looked a big physical guy, big stopper, big carries, stole some key line-outs, really coming into form for us. But both those guys have got to remember they're probably the wrong side of 30 if you are trying to freshen things up and move forward, and I don't think that's an indication of how they've played or the kind of characters they are. And as I said, I think there's a lot of this season left. Exeter in an exciting position both in Europe and in the Premiership, and I think there's still a lot for them to fight for, and to try and still champion the fact they might be able to fight their way back into the England side.
Of course, international involvement is always a little bit of a double-edged sword, because now you're going to have to do a bit of planning with one or two more missing.
Yeah, well, I think interestingly enough, for us in a way, because as you say, the guys have actually been picked up by England, other than Jack really, have been guys who've been in and out with injury now for this last period, and so we've kind of got used to them not being here. So those guys getting fit, and hopefully they'll get some game time with us to prove their fitness before they go into the Six Nations. In some ways it won't feel quite like that. It'll just be nice to see them slowly getting back to fitness, and if they're involved with England, fantastic, and if they have game time with us, fantastic. I think it's all positive.